I'm not pouncing on the women, the wives. I'm not getting on you. I just want to let you know Paul started off with the wives. The ontological structure and order, as you'll understand when we get to this text, the order of relationships is most definitely Christ being up under the Father, the man being up under Christ, the woman up under the headship of their husband, and then the children fall in line. The rules of engagement. The rules of engagement. About a decade ago, maybe in early 2000, starting out, there was a movie called Rules of Engagement, starring Samuel L. Jackson and Tommy Lee Jones. If you've never seen the movie, you need to go check it out. To make a synoptic of the movie, just a short thumbnail sketch of the movie, Samuel L. Jackson is a colonel, a decorated colonel in the Army, United States Army, and he is accused of breaking the rules of engagement. Quite frankly, Samuel L. Jackson, you don't know it to the end of the movie, he did exactly what he was supposed to do. In the movie, Samuel L. Jackson is on the embassy, and he's up on top of the embassy, and he's looking down, and he notices that the crowd that's down there is a crowd that is hostile. But you cannot engage a hostile crowd if they are unarmed, because they're still considered friendly, no matter how much they're shouting and screaming. But Samuel L. Jackson notices something. We don't find this out to the end of the movie, that they pull out M16 children and women and begin to fire on Samuel L. Jackson. Samuel L. Jackson and the men that are on top of the embassy, they begin to fire down on the people and wipes all of them out. What did Samuel L. Jackson do? He followed to the T the rules of engagement. But because he was in a position that he was the only one that can see from his perspective, the other people thought he broke the rules of engagement. Preacher, what are you saying, right? I'm setting up this text because women today, you're going to have to look from a different perspective outside of the world's parameters, outside of the world's rules of engagement. Let me help you real quick. Ray, Kiki, Boo Boo and them, Shiny and Tom and Bobby, they'll tell you that this is how you're supposed to operate in your marriage. And when you get married, this is how you're supposed to operate when you get married. But I'm trying to talk to the women holistically right now, and I'm talking to the man because y'all need to know how y'all wives need to be acting. So now y'all can mutually sanctify them. Secondly, I want the single women to get a premarital mindset. Because I don't want y'all shaving y'all legs after you get married. And brushing your teeth. I want you to do that stuff before you get married. So as we set up this text, I want us to get elevated so we can see the enemy fire. And so that we can engage the enemy the proper way. Let me give y'all some counseling. Number one, the wives need to be willing. Number two, they need to be worthy. And number three, they must be a new man vessel. Now, the new man is describing something that didn't exist before it came into contact with something else. What he's saying is, I'm not talking to people that don't know Jesus. Because he's writing to a church in Colossae. And so the people who don't know Jesus, truth is truth. And the truth shall set you free. Come on, somebody. So even if you're not a believer, it's still truth. But I know your undergarments will be in a bunch because you're really not trying to flow with this text, especially when I start talking about you being willing and worthy and even weaker. When you looked at the outline, you was already, I'm not weaker. Don't be calling me weak. You're already struggling with that thing. And you are supposed to be a new man with new glasses, with new lenses, with a different perspective, looking down on the enemy when it's ready to attack, knowing the rules of engagement. You know why you flunking in your marriage? Because you're doing it your way. You know why it's a bunch of quarrels and fights? Because you're entangled into the way the world is doing it. And I shouldn't have to tell the man to protect yourself at all times. Y'all ain't helping me right. You know, a boxing term, you know, when the referee starts that thing out, he gives the rules of engagement. He tells the fighters, he says, no hitting below the belt. No hitting behind the head. Now you got to tell them no biting the ears. He's setting the stage for the rules of engagement. And then he tells the fighters, protect yourself at all times. Come on, man. Sometimes it just feels like I got to protect myself at all times because my wife just hit me below the belt. She just hit me behind the head and she's getting biting and biting. She's just doing things her own way. Y'all got to help me up here right now. I know y'all don't say amen, just look at amen. Look straight ahead. I'll get y'all next week. I'm dealing with the man this week. But we need to know. We need to know how we are supposed to operate in our relationships. Watch this. I hear you thinking, I just can't submit to his leadership. Right? I just can't do it. No, it ain't that you can't, you just won't. Y'all ain't helping right now. Just say out. Just say out there. Just say out there. Just say out. It ain't that you can't, you just won't. You are a volitional creature made in God's image, and you have the ability and proclivity and propensity to be able to honor the principles of the Word of God. But you have to be a willing vessel. How can I be willing, preacher? You must first understand oneness. Then you must understand order. Then you must, in order for the wife to be willing, talking to the wife primarily, you have to let mama and them stay where mama and them at. Can I say it like that? Mama and daddy do not have authority in this matter. Wives, you got to stop letting your mother get in the way of what God has said. Nobody else has jurisdiction over but your husband. Did you not know that the relationship you had with your parents is no longer the same relationship? You are to honor them, but you don't have to obey them. Because now you're in a new habitat. Meaning that you need to be willing to keep the oneness between your husband more than to keep the oneness and relationship with your parents. Because the only relationship on earth that gives us a pictorial illustration of what it looks like to be in an unconditional love relationship is the marriage. Marriage gives us a picture of what it looks like when Christ stepped out of heaven and adopted the filthy church and loved you and sacrificed himself for you. And so the wife becomes the church and the husband becomes Christ. And the wife surrenders to the leadership of the husband and she salutes him, the position, not the person. All right. And she is willing. She's willing? Yeah, preacher. She is unequivocally, unapologetically going to say, that's my man. That's right. Did you not know your kids don't even come first? I know they're cute, God bless you. My wife, for example, she sets my plate up first. I know the babies are hungry. I know y'all still bothered by that. But the rules of engagement, I know Genesis will eat, I promise you. But Rashad needs to be first. Why? Because it sets the stage to let the children know, because Genesis one day gonna bounce and get married, and she needs to know that the husband comes first. He's the king, he's the president, and she's the vice president. So when the president decides we ain't doing that, he has veto power. Not as a tyranny, but he has the ability to lead the family. Why? Because God has placed him in authority. God ain't helping me. Watch this. Who chose your husband? What? God has given you the willingness and the volitional responsibility. When you saw that fine young man, you picked him. And then made up excuses for his not yet right now. And then made up excuses because he wasn't developed and ready. And mama, I promise you, he will be. Right? And so you picked him, and now you're complaining about what he's not and what you want him to be. But you picked him, and God allowed you to pick him. And now you don't want to willfully surrender to what you picked. Even in the Trinity, even in the Godhead, they are still equal. But see, here's the differentiation. All equal, but for function and role, they operate differently. And so Christ surrenders to the will of the Father to accomplish redemption of humanity. And then when he bounces and goes back to the Father, he sends another who is the comforter that comes down not to do his will, but the will of the Son and the will of the Father. And so in the same thing in marriage, the wife looks at her husband as a Christ-like vessel. And she looks at him like the church looks at Christ, and she honors him just like the church honors Christ. Because when she doesn't honor him, she doesn't honor Christ.
Make it plain. Hear me, Lord.
You know how we do. We come into church and flip, scream, and shout and speak in other languages and swing on the chandeliers and all that other stuff and can't wait to get plugged into church. And then we leap up over the responsibility of our husband in our home and serve the pastor, senior pastor, more than we serve the real pastor, which is the husband. No. He's the first pastor. All I do is equip him to pastor. You can't come in here and serve me wholeheartedly without first serving him wholeheartedly. That ain't helping me right here. You cannot skip over the husband and then come to church and scream and shout, because God says take your scream and shout and your sacrifice back home and put that willingness under your husband's leadership, and then I'm going to bless you. But if you don't do that, there'll be repercussions and consequences. I'm going to give you exactly what you earn, and I'm going to give you exactly what you deserve without partiality. Did you not know you are to surrender under his leadership even if he's wrong? But I don't agree with what you're doing. If it's not sinful, then you still have to surrender under his leadership. You may disagree, but he has veto power. I know that's bothering you right there. Stay single. I told you before, it's a struggle because you Eve like. Remember, Eve wants to have the final say. She wants to tell you what y'all should be doing and what y'all shouldn't be doing. But you picked him, and now don't try to act like he don't know what he's doing. So choose wisely. Understand that she's a weaker vessel. Get it in your head, man. And I think y'all already know it. That's why you treat them like crap. That's why you treat them like a vase and not a vase. I'm preaching. Y'all didn't even really know. See, because a vase, you just throw out and let anybody just kick over. You just let the vase, you don't care nothing about the vase. You just sit that thing out right there, and anybody can come by and knock it off the shelf. But when you got a vase, you put that thing and you protect that thing. You cover that thing up because you know she's precious. She's like that flower that needs to be watered and taken care of and put out in the sun to grow and develop. So you take care of this weaker vessel because you understand that's the way God has designed your wife. Not weaker spiritually, but weaker physically and even sometimes emotionally. But that's a compliment. That's not a negative. Because some men can't get in touch with their emotions and they need their helpmate to help them see how they should be leading the family. So the weaker piece is actually a strength. Ooh, I'm liking that. So when you understand that your wife is a vase that needs to be protected and cared for, and not a vase that you just kick over and let anybody touch and come into and put any type of stuff inside of it. Ooh, when you do that, you become a worthy man of God. But the woman needs to understand that's who you are. Quit trying to be tough. You ain't got to be tough. That's why you're single, half of you, because nobody wants no tough woman. I want a woman that understands she needs a leader. I want a woman that understands she needs a man that will honor God and love God and lead her lovingly, gracefully, joyfully, and lead her unconditionally. That's the type of woman that's worthy. That's the type of woman that's willing. That's the type of woman that understands the willingness. A posture piece really is she has a consciousness, a mentality, and the outward behavior shows an outward behavior of an attitude. So her attitude leads to altitude. Whatever is going on in the inside will show up on the outside. She's living, watch me, inside out.
Okay.
Yeah, not outside in. So when her inside gets right, it can't help it as it relates to flowing out in her marriage and in her relationship.
Yeah, from trying to get over to flying overseas, I don't understand it all, but I know who oversees. I'm in the sky looking down at the Pacific Ocean, hoping the Father's arms are open for the broken, hopeless. Touchdown all around as the evidence, his power takes precedence over all of these elements.